Well, it's time for part 3 of my ongoing epiphany that came in the wake of the Ma'Khia Bryant shooting and the reaction to it. And today I want to address sort of the problem of white liberals in this whole equation. The way I've been talking over the last couple of days was about BLM, but more specifically about black people who support BLM. Nothing that I said really applied to white people, because I was speaking about it and trying to think from a black person's perspective, who is going along with all of these things, and as a part of let's say the actual protests, not just going out there and saying, hey, this is a great excuse for me to go steal a washing machine, and they don't really care about the politics of it. I mean someone who's really invested in the politics of this issue. And as I said, if you're looking at this as a black person, if you are truly outraged by what this white cop did in shooting Ma'Khia Bryant, who was about to apparently murder another girl. We don't know that she would have died, but I mean, you take a knife like that that's pulled all the way back and you swing it and, let's say, slash a girl's throat, she's probably not going to live. So by any objective standard, this was, about the most justified police shooting that has ever occurred. Yet the crowd still got up in a rage at this cop who carried out this shooting and saved the girl in pink's life. And they are still going out and marching, in memory of this girl and talking about how she was murdered by the cops and this was terrible. And so the epiphany that I had is that, well, the problem here with the BLM folks, and I don't mean to reiterate too much, I'm going to move quickly through this. The problem with the BLM folks is not that cops are being brutal to them. It's not that the cops necessarily do bad things sometimes, or that they are enforcing, bad laws and, just locking up people for bad reasons and things like that. The problem is that these cops are white. The problem is that they feel like their group is being, patrolled and policed by an out group, and they don't like that. They want, they want to settle disputes amongst themselves. And so the natural conclusion that you would draw from that kind of sentiment is that the answer, the solution that they're looking for, is some sort of black autonomy or black nationalism. But while I do think that makes sense in the mind, or looking at the mindset of the Black Lives Matter activist, the white liberal Black Lives Matter activist, I don't think would come to that conclusion at all, or at least not if they're thinking too far ahead. You see, I always knew that the white liberal Black Lives Matter activist was irredeemable, in that I know that to begin with, liberals do not care about freedom. And so if the liberals have a problem with the cops, it's not that cops are taking away people's freedoms or that the cops are being too brutal or whatever. Maybe they think that the cops have bad optics sometimes. Because liberals do care a lot about optics. They care much more about optics than substance. But when it comes to somebody committing an act that they don't like, liberals are very happy to see the cops brutalize those people. They're very happy to watch people be abused in prison if they're people that they don't like. White liberals are extremely sadistic. And so, to begin with, their problem with the police, I never thought that it was connected to the black person's problem with the police. I've always thought that the white liberal was exploiting whatever the black man's problem was. And obviously, they like to exploit that for votes and whatnot. There's the Machiavellian side to this. But the white liberal true believer in Black Lives Matter, what is it really that they want? And the answer to that is I don't think that they really know. The culture of sort of white liberals inside the Black Lives Matter movement is very much one of playing second fiddle. They call themselves allies. When they have these riots and and there's a police line or whatever, you hear them shout, "White allies to the front," because the white people are supposed to stand there and be human shields, literally white knighting for the rioters. And so I think it's clear that for the average white liberal, their role in the Black Lives Matter movement is purely an act of virtue signaling, but also self-aggrandizement. It is purely emotional in that they want to feel like they're doing a good thing, like they are, it's the white savior complex, which is classic amongst white liberals. None of this is groundbreaking. Plenty of people have said this before about white people in BLM. However, what I found interesting in thinking about this is that the interests of the white liberal very much contradict those of the black BLM activist. If you accept my premise that I think that their interest now is going to be in black nationalism and black autonomism, nobody would be harmed more by that, or actually nobody would be harmed, period, by that, except for white liberals. And that is because black Americans, since the Great Depression, have been a very docile and reliable voting bloc for the white liberals. White liberals are only elected to anything because black people are part of their coalition. Now, perhaps there are going to be isolated local places where there aren't a lot of black people to begin with, and there just happen to be lots of white liberals who can elect each other. But in most parts of the country, and certainly nationally, it would be impossible for a white liberal to win if the BLM movement moved to push for black autonomism and separate development, as I discussed yesterday, American apartheid, and we create this Bantustan archipelago of black communities around the country that are governed separately from the white cis male patriarchy, white supremacist constitutional government that we have here in the United States. And, I think that it's, you say, well, that sounds a little extreme. Well, I mean, the BLM people are openly talking about, they want to get rid of our current system. Well, I've been wondering, well, what do they want to replace it with? I don't think they want to replace it with, Soviet communism. I think that that's a ridiculous, that was always a ridiculous assertion. But, this Bantustan archipelago starts to make some sense in that context. That would be a way for them to truly separate from this terrible white supremacist system that they are currently being governed by. But that would leave the white liberal now to be a very small minority in the new America. Much like the white liberal in apartheid South Africa, the white liberal in apartheid America would never be able to gain anywhere close to a victory on the national level. The more conservative parties, or party, or whatever the new system would look like, would ultimately have a pretty strong grip on the remainder of America, because, if you take out the black community, the left has, they just don't appeal to a whole lot of people. And so now we have a situation where the interests of the Black Lives Matter activists contradict the interests, or and go directly against the interests of the white liberal Black Lives Matter supporters. And I see this as quite the opportunity, because I see no downside now to trying to push sort of an accelerationist agenda when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement. Because on the one hand, you would have black people increasingly wanting to separate themselves from, our terrible white supremacist system here in the United States, and pursue a policy of separate development for their community, to want to, kick out the white cops and have their own, black regime of social workers or whatever. And to the extent that they're successful in doing this, they would of course be removed. In order to be fair, they would have to be, they would have to remove themselves from the, from the terrible American white supremacist system, thus further isolating the white liberal. Now, if they fail, it will be because the white liberal turns on them, seeing what the natural result of it will be. And if that is indeed the case, if the white liberal starts to realize, oh wait, this BLM thing has gone too far, they want to separate They want their, they want their own political power. They don't want to be playing, they don't want to be second lieutenants in the Democratic Party army anymore. They want the whole pie. Well, then the white liberals, as well as probably the black establishment, the old guard types, will move in to crack down on BLM. And so now, in 3 short days, my clown pill has evolved and blossomed into a white pill. And I have to say, this is actually, as much as I felt like things had changed so much, in my view of the situation since the beginning of the George Floyd thing, when I said, oh, well, this is great. Maybe black people will want to, have more localized police forces or whatever. And that would be better because, I like decentralization generally. We've kind of come back full circle to this, except now with an explicitly racial element to it. Because, it's clear that there's nothing really that matters to the BLM movement other than racial differences. So yes, maybe it's time to stop resisting the, as much as I don't like them, because I really have contempt for anyone who riots. Perhaps I should take a more Machiavellian stance and encourage the Black Lives Matter movement more overtly. Perhaps we all should encourage them, tell them that they deserve to control their own communities, and that they should not be subject to the law of the white supremacist cis-male patriarchy, or whatever they want to call it. I guess that's more of a white liberal term, white supremacist cis-male patriarchy. But, maybe call it the white supremacist occupation government, kind of like the Zionist occupation government. We'll just repurpose different, different racially charged terms. Encourage the young black man to declare independence from the white man, to organize, and to become the first president, perhaps, of African America. That's what we could call it. The Bantustan archipelago doesn't sound too positive. It sounds like a derogatory term. So I wouldn't want to use that, I guess, in the presence of people who I'm actually trying to sell this idea on. But again, this is not something that I want to happen necessarily. This is not my political goal. I have very different goals, although I could work with this if this was happening. It would be much better to do this rather than just have perpetual riots forever and black people constantly being passive-aggressive towards me because they think I'm a white devil. I mean, black people in America already, refuse to stand for the American flag because they have contempt for it, which is appropriate. Well, I don't know if appropriate is the right term, but I understand that. They don't want to stand for the white, for what they consider to be the white national anthem. They have their own black national anthem. Well, they have their black flag, the red, green, and black, black nationalist flag that they wave at BLM protests. They have their black national anthem. Well, now I think they need their black nation, the Federation of African America, or the African American Federation. Perhaps you could call it that. Otherwise, they're going to have to keep staring at that stupid old red, white, and blue American flag, listening to our silly little white American anthem, and dealing with white cops, just sort of strutting around their neighborhood, walking their streets like they own the place. Stopping murderers, mid-stab, as if they're heroes. I mean, the gall of these white cops. So, I think now that it is explicitly the right must endorse BLM in order to defeat the left. Because if the left can be completely politically crippled, well, then we only have to worry about right-wingers taking away our freedoms. And frankly, the left has proven that they are a much, much bigger threat than right-wingers when it comes to civil liberties. And over the past 4 years, right-wingers have gotten significantly better on civil liberties and the deep state and questioning authority and all of these things. And, of course, the lockdowns and stuff. The right is in a much better spot now, I think, mindset-wise, than it has been, for my lifetime. And keep in mind, by teaming up with Black Lives Matter, they will not even if they know that you're explicitly doing it because you want to defeat white liberals, they won't care because they don't like white liberals either. They treat them horribly. I think that the BLM activists might actually have a bit more respect for right-wingers who see that there is a mutual interest here, and reach out and try to, achieve common goals. Again, it is a pity that I'm in no position of influence, because this would be such an interesting sort of problem to work on. I love thinking about these sorts of things, and how to really come up with out-of-the-box solutions to political problems, considering that, our political leaders are 99.9% brain-dead people who just get up in the morning and, put their tie on and eat their donut, and, well, they probably don't eat donuts, but what do they eat? Maybe scones? And drink their coffee, and they go in and they sign whatever their staffers tell them to sign, and then they go home for the day and they collect a $250,000 salary at the very least. So few of them are actually interested in politics and the game and how it's played, and other than just getting free money and corruption and stuff like that. I have nothing but contempt for corrupt people. I have no real respect for them as technicians. Not that I like politics in general. I don't. I think that it's a terrible thing. I wish it was something that we could put behind us as a species. I wish that humanity could do away with politics, but I do still have some admiration for people who, or admiration is the wrong word. I have some respect for people who are skilled in that, particularly skilled in politics. So I think that's where I'll leave it there for today. That is as deep as I have explored this idea. I don't think that I'll continue this series tomorrow. I think that 3 in a row is plenty enough. Although I think it's good that I've bridged out from just news stuff, so that I was able to have time, because I try and take, every time I pick a story, I try and get as deep into it as I can to explore all the different sides of it, or rather the deeper implications of it, especially when I talk about wars and stuff. I like to give background context on the war state. But in this case, I think that the Ma'Khia Bryant shooting was a significant enough event in my mind to really flesh this out over 3 separate days. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.